Hello everyone, and welcome to the last in the series of our Return to mini webinars supporting our club and school coaches as they return to the game. My name is Joyce Sparks. I'm the Regional Rugby Lead for the South East of the province, and I'm joined by Darren McGuigan, who's the Regional Rugby Lead for the South of the province. Hello Darren, how are you?
Morning Joy, all good.
Good morning. Okay Darren, so today's focus really, we're looking at P7 or Year 8 kids in ages that's under 11 and under 12 players. So over the course of this webinar, we're looking to maybe provide some suitable content on games and some technical content as coaches and players start to return to the game. So what would your advice maybe be for coaches dealing with players at this age group in terms of what's the key sort of themes and messages that you're trying to get across?
Yeah, well, for under 11s, under 12s, the game is still about simplicity. So what we're looking for is identifying what activities or what skills the attack needs and what the defence needs. So both sides of the ball, from an attacking point of view, is can the players identify where the space is? Can they carry the ball in two hands instead under the one arm? Look to move the ball in motion so they're on the run rather than taking it standing. If they're engaging with the defence, it's about good footwork. From a defensive point of view, it's about going forward, making sure that we're in a low body position to make shoulder contact. And then what we're looking for then is as the attacking player then carries, looks after the ball, falls safely, making sure that they're presenting the ball correctly and keeping that ball alive. And for the defending team to be looking maybe to try and steal the ball or to get for both sets of players from the attack and the defence to get ready to engage in maybe the ruck. So a lot of the activities that we will do in the next couple of slides are around small-sided games based on themes, and we'll talk a wee bit more about that.
Great. Okay, Darren, so what we're looking at here are some themes. So you mentioned a couple there, but could you briefly maybe just highlight some of the key areas in terms of those themes of what you'd want to try and ensure your players and coaches are encouraging good practice?
Of course. So we've got four pillars or four themes. A lot of this is based on the open game, so it's outside set piece. So ball movement, moving the ball, catch pass, moving around the field, ball carry when we're getting ready to look at maybe taking defenders on, tackle technique from the defensive point of view, and what we do with the ball in the breakdown situation. So it's the defending team, can they steal the ball? Can they get into a position to try and get hands on the ball? From the attacking team's point of view, can they fall and present? And a lot of this here, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of like a checklist, but can a coach identify what are the teaching points within ball movement? What are the teaching points or the words or phrases that you need to introduce when you're talking about carrying the ball? What do we need to think about when we're making tackles and the breakdown?
So I take it, Darren, I'm just looking at foot in the hoop, the terminology there. Obviously, players at this age group, there's a lot of tackling with hands and maybe poor body height. Can you maybe just explain what foot in the hoop is? Is that getting close to the player? What's that looking at?
Yeah, foot in the hoop is something actually came out of one of our coaching courses, and this was a coach who thought about terminology or buzzwords that the young players will understand rather than the coach trying to demonstrate and using old school language. The foot in the hoop is basically your attacking player and there's an imaginary hoop below that player. And how you can make a tackle more effectively is by getting your feet in as close as possible to the attacker's feet. So that then creates a closer, proximity for a person to make a tackle. Because we know that a lot of players probably tackle with their hands or wrists or arms are out too wide. And that's simply because we haven't got close to that defender as possible. So that's where we think that a kid will sort of resonate. We're thinking about putting their foot in the hoop. Getting that foot, if you're tackling with your right shoulder, you've got to get your right foot in as close to the attacking ball carrier's feet as possible. So things like that, little buzzwords, and then there's another couple of things about, the usual stuff about cheek to cheek. But foot in the hoop is something that might resonate with kids at this level.
Yeah, so just using language that those players might understand. Great, perfect. Okay, Darren, if we move on then to the next slide, I think we're going to look at some small-sided games. And obviously you're going to talk through these and in terms of what their meaning is and how coaches can introduce these into their sessions. So Fiji then, Darren.
Yeah, so a lot of these games then we came up as names of games, so the kids and the coaches after a while will have it in their heads that they know that this game has a particular theme. So Fiji is about ball carry. So can they carry the ball? Can they try and keep the ball in two hands? Look for their feet, first of all, good footwork to take the defender on, and we're looking for that ball to be moved in the tackle rather than going to ground, or if the player does go to ground, that they can pop that ball up as quick as possible. So it's quite a fast game. The next game then is we call France. And this is about spatial awareness. It's about moving the ball to the spaces where there's least defenders. We move on then to a Samoa game where it is a wee bit similar to Fiji, but this is about making decisions where defenders drop out, and then we've opportunities then to move the ball to the spaces or try and keep the ball alive in the tackle. And the last game is All Blacks. And again, this is slightly based on time or pressure, where we're looking at a certain period of time, maybe 1-2 minutes, where the coach puts the onus on the attacking team that you've got to score within that time, or you've got to score maybe within 4 or 5 phases.
Okay then, Darren, so Fiji, first game, can you maybe just talk us through what this game is looking at, please?
So this is a scenario-based game on the overall game of rugby, but we're looking at identifying the ball carrier in and around continuity. So both from the attack and the defence, what we're looking for is trying to keep the ball alive. The attack must score within 6 phases, and what we're looking for the defensive team to do is to grab holes. So there's an opportunity then of, if we keep the grabs quite low around the waist, we're looking for the ball then, the players that carry the ball in 2 hands to wriggle and free up the arms and look to make an offload. Or if they're going to ground, maybe pop the ball up off the ground. So it's about a fast game, trying to keep the ball alive, rather than maybe not so much passing the ball to the outside or to the edge. It's about keeping it in close proximity, and we're looking at our close support players there working to get into a position to take an offload to continue the flow of play.
Brilliant. And you mentioned earlier about the principles of play. So obviously going forward would be key, and support and communication in this game.
Yeah, and that's very much up to the coach actually to question the players. What are we trying to achieve? How do we get to the try line? It's about, first of all, going forward, trying to provide opportunities for continuity of play. And that all depends on supporting players reacting to where the ball carrier, who's probably used his sidestep skills to get beyond the defender, free up the arms and then look for that offload. But if the offload isn't there, it's probably because the supporting players aren't in a position to receive the offload.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, moving on then, Darren, to France. So
okay, France is a wee bit easier to think about. This is about ball movement. So we start off, first of all, with equal numbers. This could be 8v8, 7v7, anything. What we're looking for is the attacking team to constantly attack for maybe 1 to 3 minutes. But every time there's a grab, we're looking where that defensive player grabs on to the player, slowing that player down. The attacking player tries to keep moving forward by pumping the legs. But at each time there's a grab, then we're looking for that coach to call the defender out, and he or she must leave the pitch. We're looking for the ball to be passed, recycled, and then the next time there's a grab, the second defender then starts to move out. So that's reducing the numbers in defence, which gives the attacking team opportunities then to score. And they'll only take those opportunities if they communicate, if they identify where the space is. And what we're looking for here, the stipulation is there must be a minimum of 2 passes. So we're getting the ball away from that sort of close proximity of players to the players that are out in the wider channels.
I think this is a great game, really challenging the players to look up and to see what's in front of them, and obviously with the defender out of the game, seeing where that space opens up, and then really encouraging the support players to look at that space, identify it, and to get through that space and go forward. I think that's a great game. Especially
when the coaches then can maybe put a little bit of competition on it, where you'd like to think with each dropout of defenders, then that'll create a quicker opportunity to get a score. So maybe if a team scores after 1.5 minutes, well then the other team then they've got to score faster. So there's a wee bit of competitiveness, and maybe the season record becomes 45, 30 seconds, and it sort of tests each team then to try and do that quicker.
Samoa then, Darren, please.
Okay, Samoa, again, continuity, decision making the players make the best decisions as they see fit. So the game now is about double grab, so it's like double touch. that's an old school game where instead of just on one grab and you stop and you put the ball between your legs, what we're trying to achieve is continuity in play, quick, fast play, where the player who's grabbed has to try and still fight, still pump the legs, carry the ball in two hands, and then look for the offload. If the offload isn't there, another defender is allowed to come in and grab, so they're slowing the player down even more. And on the second grab, the player must go to ground. So he or she's got to fight, manipulate their upper body, fall correctly, and then maybe look to pop the ball up off the ground. But that pop will only take place if you've got the close support players in close proximity communicating where they want the ball. If not, then we're looking to pass the ball out into space. But mainly this is a double grab game, so it's about continuity, moving forward all the time. We go back to the principles of play of moving forward rather than going laterally all the time.
That's great, Darren. It's a great game. I think it's important to mention also for coaches just to try and encourage the player with the ball to try and beat the player first and foremost in front of them, and obviously then if there's a grab tackle to get their arms free and to look for that support. But I think it's a great game for keeping the ball alive, keeping the energy levels up and making the players concentrate and ensuring their supporting lines are good in terms of getting over the gain line and hopefully scoring tries. Brilliant.
Okay.
All Blacks, Darren?
Yeah, this is maybe an opportunity for people to perform many skills on the pitch. So again, ball carrier, so you're changing that footwork. Can you take your defender on? Can you beat that player and move the ball off an offload, or move the ball maybe wider earlier? What we're looking for now is a stopwatch or a time where the coach dictates or says maybe you've got a certain period of time, maybe 2 minutes to score. But we're not taking any defenders out this time, so you've maybe a time to score within, or maybe the coach says you've got 6, 7, 4 phases, and if you don't score within those phases, then the ball will go to the opposition. The least amount of phases is the winner, or the least amount of time. So maybe you'll have 3 goals for the attack for one team, 3 goals for the other team, and you see if they can get scores in the least amount of time as possible. But what we'd like to maybe encourage, so say you're counting down, there's 15 seconds left. That will maybe you put a stipulation in where the attacking team maybe does a little grubber kick in behind, so the defence are still flat. It's probably player on player, and maybe the kids will have the opportunity of practicing their grubber kicks. You know, it's another opportunity. Why not practice another skill? Or maybe you're coming to the last of maybe 4, 5, 6 phases, and the coach says, right, you've got 2 more phases before the ball's turned over. Think about that grubber kick. And that'll maybe let the game become a wee bit more fun, where there's another skill involved in this game.
Perfect. It's a great game, for continuous attack, putting those players under a little bit more pressure, but giving them a bit more freedom in terms of what they do with the ball and just keeping the ball alive, and obviously trying to play with what's in front of them. I suppose with the time period and the phases, putting that bit of extra pressure on will challenge the players more, and hopefully then be able to develop and promote those skills.
Yeah, and what I'd like to sort of remind all the coaches is there's 4 games here. You don't have to go through them all. The All Blacks game might be more fun. It might be an easier game to understand. The Fiji game or the France game, where you're simply taking defenders out and there's more opportunities to score tries. You'll not know until the capacities of your players or the skill level of your players shows up in the game. And if they can't get what you're trying to achieve through the themes, then maybe you've got to stick with the games that your team are more successful at.
Absolutely. Would you agree, Darren, to maybe keep these games as small-sided as possible to try and promote development and learning?
Yeah, more touches on the ball for the players, the better. We don't want players standing out on the wing or the edge and not getting enough of the ball. Everybody should have the opportunity to, first of all, use the footwork, agility to take a player on, to carry forward, to look for the offload. We just don't want that player standing out in the wing and getting the ball once inside 3 minutes, or if they're lucky to get the ball at all. So smaller sided games get more opportunities for touches of the ball. The last game that we have is just our normal game of rugby. So for under 11s, under 12s, it's probably 12 aside. You've got a bigger pitch. There'll be set piece involved in this, scrum and line out. But I think as coaches now, particularly with this age group, we should be setting standards, and we should be setting maybe for the attacking team what we call non-negotiables. So referring back to the mini games that we have, The non-negotiables should be maybe a minimum of 2 passes away from a breakdown or a tackle. So it stops that first receiver trying to crash over all the time, trying to look for contact. But if we set a minimum target of 2 passes, it gets that ball away to the space where players are out wide. We must have the ball in 2 hands and we must run forward. If your attacking players do not do those 3 non-negotiables, we'll just give the ball to the opposite team and they'll have a go at it. If the first ball carrier carries the ball in 1 hand, whistle, no, wrong thing, let's give the ball to the opposition. So the kids will probably hit you at the start, but they will realise that that's the best way to perform, okay, by carrying the ball in 2 hands, getting the ball away from the breakdown and running forward. Not really worry too much about anything else. If they make mistakes, that's fine, but the non-negotiables of attack should be those 3 parts.
Absolutely, and at this age group, you should be, as coaches, encouraging the players for these good habits. Obviously it's going to be important for their development. Like you say, the players might be, a bit annoyed at the start for continually getting the ball turned over if you've only the ball in 1 hand. But it is really important, obviously, that you really ensure that these players are developing their technique and that they're ensuring that that's carried forward before they move into youth rugby.
So as I move on to the next slide, there's loads of variations, loads of adaptations to these games. So in attack, you could stipulate there must be X amount of passes. Ball carrier must work hard on the ground. So whenever he or she is being tackled or grabbed, if they're going to ground, they must fight forward and not just fall to ground. So we're looking for trying to keep the ball alive, which brings the defence back a couple of steps. From the defensive point of view, defence can't enter certain areas of the pitch, so then that will put the emphasis on the attacking team to move the ball to where there's greater numbers in attack. You have different levels of contact, level 1 being 2-handed touch, level 2 being the grab, where the ball carrier can offload through the tackle, and level 3 is game-like conditions. So again, a lot of adaptations there, a lot of information, but coaches can just refer to a couple of things in attack, defence, and work through that. And again, not trying to complicate things, just pick out 1 or 2 things from that.
Just on that, it's a really good opportunity then for coaches to be able to be a little bit creative in what they're doing in terms of their outcomes of the game, to base it on maybe their session plan. Absolutely,
and we've highlighted 4 games, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just given 4 themes based on specific parts of rugby in general. But you as a coach have the opportunity to adapt. And again, you don't know how many players are going to turn up on a Saturday morning for your training session. So that dictates how you can adapt your game. You might be low in numbers, so you might overload the attack to get some sort of successful outcome for the attacking team, or you might overload the defence. So you have a wee bit of movement there where you can make up adaptations to the game based on what you have, and again based on those 3 scenarios there: attack, defence, and the game in general, and you can move things around. We're not being prescriptive here, we're just giving coaches the opportunity then to use some of these themes and scenarios, and if it doesn't work, fine, change it. But we're quite hopeful here that we have an opportunity now of giving coaches a lot of information and a lot of scenarios to put into their coaching to make this game as enjoyable for our players as possible.
Okay, great stuff, Darren. Okay, so we're going to move on then, I think, to an example of a session plan. And obviously we've got to appreciate that these kids have been out of the game for the guts probably of about 6 months. So, Darren, just then when you pull up the slide, perhaps could you maybe talk us through what your thoughts are in terms of the structure of that session and what that looks like, knowing that these players will have been out of the game for so long?
So over the last week or so, what we've been coming up with is a 4-week session block. So the kids have been out of rugby for a long time, for February, and now we're moving into September, and most mini sections are going to start up around the 5th, some of them on the 12th. So we want to gradually reintroduce kids back into rugby. They've probably not been active, they've probably not been playing other sports So rugby in particular, with its contact nature, we've got to gradually introduce that. So we've got a 4-week plan based on an hour session, and hopefully you can see everything that I have in front. So what we recommend that as we gradually build up, we're going to introduce the ball. We're going to introduce a lot of games where they're moving, where they're running, playing with their mates. On the left-hand side, we've got the activity. Starting off at the top, we've got a warm-up game with movement skills and a time period of 10 minutes. So the teaching notes on the right-hand side, this is a game of keep ball where we can have a small grid, maybe 10 by 10, where we've got maybe 16 players, 8v8 or 8v5, where you might want to overload the attacking team. And the team makes as many passes as possible, any direction, a wee bit like rugby netball, basketball, but they're allowed to move, they're allowed to catch pass. There's no tries as such. But if they drop the ball or the other team intercept it, then that is a turnover, and then the coach should count this out. So maybe you set a target of 10 passes, and if the team in bibs can get 5 passes, then they've got something to work on. And maybe that comes back to the questioning: why did we not get more than 5 passes? Maybe players are not getting their hands up. Little teaching points that you'll be asking of the players. Maybe they didn't move away and they're bunching together. Part of that end ball game, we'll be looking at animal movements, where you're doing bear crawls. So that's the stretching element as well, and it's fun. Rats and rabbits, stick in the mud. A lot of these activities that a lot of coaches have seen before. And then you might go back into that keep ball game where you might have a try line. So it's a game of end ball as such, where you've got a score. Again, adaptability. Work what you have, but again, it's gradually moving into something that looks like rugby, where we're bringing in balls. Then as we move down, we've got a game, and the next game is our France game. So we refer back to what are the regulations here. Start with equal numbers. One team constantly attacks for 1 to 3 minutes. Every time there's a touch, the toucher leaves the field. So that's reducing the amount of players in defence, and that hopefully then creates overlaps. Or scenarios where players then can move into that space and score tries. Grid maybe set up 30 by 30, and again, this game could be played for 10 to 15 minutes. So then we move on, and we have skill development. So we refer back to that game. Maybe there's 1 or 2 things that didn't work, maybe our catch pass, and particularly as this is our first training session, we're just going to work on catch pass here, where we've got our short to mid to wide passing activity. So it's usually your lateral hands where they're lined up in 4s, and in between the blue cones that they're moving forward, passing the ball along the line to the blue cone. Then the coach maybe in motion will call out yellow, so the players have got to spread out. So they've got to organise themselves a wee bit like the game of rugby. They've got to span out, and the passes become a wee bit more testing, so they're longer. And then that tests the coaching points, where we focus on the early catch, getting your catch up, reaching towards where the ball is coming from, and pointing and shooting at the target as they pass the ball. And then we move on to the red. And then the coach has license then to reduce that back down to blue. So the players, as they move, have got to react and narrow up or get wider through the activity. And then we move back into a game. So we've worked on our catch pass and the key teaching points. And then we're moving back to a game, for example, the Samoa game, where we're working on continuity. And for this age group, again, we'd recommend on day 1, it just being a grab, even a touch. And if the team are touched 5 times, then the ball goes to the opposition. So what does that tell the attacking team? Maybe they have got to think about moving the ball a wee bit more, rather than passing it once and getting touched, passing it once, getting touched twice. So that slows down the opportunities to score. So again, I've just put in there where one-handed touch, you try and offload, two-handed touch, they must fall and present the ball. So you again can adapt this game as you see fit. Then we've got, whatever players that you have. You can do this as 4v4. If you've got 16 players, then it's an 8v8, or you can overload the attack. You can adapt that game as you see fit. So that basically is our first week back.
So Darren, there, in terms of your reduced activity, you've got in there. Players just want to play the game, and that's all they want to ever do is play games. Why do you think it's important then for coaches to put in a little bit of that reduced activity, that skill development into their sessions?
Everybody wants to play games, but things are breaking down within that game. And even if it's under 11s and under 12s, their catch pass should be worked on at every session. So this is ball movement, this is accuracy of pass, and the teaching points that coaches need to have in the back of their mind. What makes a successful catch pass between a bunch of players is those technical little pointers where you don't need to reinforce all the time, but you as a coach need to observe what is going right or what is going wrong in the game. So we played our France game, and then as an example, particularly on this first session, then our catch pass will probably have to be worked on as well. So you've identified a little block within that game, and then you're going to focus on that, get some sort of success, ask questions to your players, get positivity, and then put it back into another game. So what we started again is the warm-up, we went to game, we went to reduced activity or skill development, and then we put it into another game. We finished that game off. And that should take us up to 60 minutes within a session. And again, there might be one or two other little things like evasion skills that coach might be confident. And again, we're not being prescriptive here on what you do, but in this sort of flow where you've got a warm-up, you've got a game, you've got skill development, you back into a game, we feel that's the best thing to cover a lot of activity within a session. If we move on then to session 2, I'll not go into any detail, it starts to pick up a little bit more towards rugby with catch pass under pressure. And then we've got another 3 sessions after that where we introduce some elements of contact in week 3. And this is where we're going into evasion skills and the contact skills. We're not thinking about anything that looks like contact rugby in our first 2 sessions, but we're looking to move that and gradually bring that in when we return maybe to week 4, and that's probably taking us up to the end of September. Also, we've got additional activities here for more fun warm-up games. So there's loads of stuff here that we can do, and hopefully the coaches will take advantage of this. Ball handling activities, familiarization, short to long, sweep passing off the grounds, a myriad of activities and skills that hopefully will test your players, and then we move into a little bit of tackling and continuity. So lots of activities there that we will be putting up on the website. Following on from these webinars, and hopefully the coaches will get a lot of benefit out of it.
Great stuff, Darren. As you say, a lot of information there, a lot of good information, hopefully for coaches to take away. I think, our advice would be just to keep things simple. Don't rush into things, just get them used to being back at rugby and enjoying being back at rugby with their friends, and just develop it, at a good, controlled and safe rate. So Darren, thank you very much. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the webinar and the week of webinars. And as Darren says, all of the content should be on a link underneath each of the webinars. If there's any queries, please get in touch with one of your rugby development officers or your regional leads. Thank you.
Thanks, Joy.